Da Vinci. The Art of the Question is the title of my speech today, and I want to begin with a quote by Einstein. Einstein said if he had 1 hour to solve a problem and his life depended on it, he would spend the first 55 minutes crafting the right questions. Because if he had the right questions, he could solve the problem in 5 minutes. And that got me thinking, I think in education in this country, we maybe have it backwards. I want you to think about the importance of asking questions, and why they are important, and how we might become better at them. And especially open-ended questions like why, how, and what if. Now, questioning comes easy to children, and you say, well, why would that be? Well, children don't know anything, so of course they question. They question until they know the answer, and then once they know the answer, they no longer need to ask the question to the same. They don't need to ask the same question because they know the answer. But what if children are more curious than adults? What if children retain a certain ignorance about the world that is actually helpful even as you grow older? Well, adults know more than kids, let's say, but why are adults not encouraged to ask questions? Well, we're supposed to have the answers by the time we're adults. We're supposed to know. But it seems to me like often when we're asked a question, we give a very quick response. We don't go very deep or very broad with our answer. So seeking good answers without good questions seems to be putting the cart before the horse, right? Why would you do that? Well, we do that out of habit. And it seems to me that creativity has been largely taken out of the equation. Because when you're given a question like, where did you go last weekend? You say, I went to Santa Cruz. That's an easy answer. You just default to that answer because it's something that's in your mind. But if I said, why did you go to Santa Cruz? And what did you do, and why did you do that? Why didn't you do this other thing? It gets more complicated. So Einstein also said that it is not that he's so smart, but that he stays with the questions much longer, which again is inspiration to focus away from having the quick answer to focusing on the question. I read a book, or actually I'm reading a book called A More Beautiful Question, and I found this book very interesting because of the very things Einstein is saying. Spend 55 minutes when you have the time. Sit down at your computer with a notebook and write out the questions that you would like to ask about a specific topic. Something that's bothering you, something at work, something in a relationship, whatever. And spend time only focusing on the question during that 55 minutes. The natural urge will be, well, let's get to the answer. What is the answer? Block out the answer. For 55 minutes, you're only thinking about the question. And do it in detail. I've done this for a number of themes that are interest to me. And in 55 minutes, I would come up with essentially a 1 paragraph long question because it was so detailed, which you wouldn't want to really ask a 1 paragraph question. You would lose the individual you're speaking to. But the point of it is that you're getting so detailed, so broad, and so you're being focused in so many different directions that the question is actually getting longer, but it's getting better in my experience. So for example, when I went to Japan to do my dissertation field work, I had to focus on one primary theme, which was higher education policy. But as far as what I could do, it was wide open. Who did I want to speak with? Where did I want to go? Did I want to go to public universities, to private? Did I want to speak to professors, faculty, or administrators, staff, students? What I was doing in this research was comparing policy before and after the policy was implemented. I wanted to find out what changes had occurred. And so I decided, okay, I'll focus on professors and administrators. I won't look at students because they probably weren't there anyway when this policy was implemented several years earlier. And I wanted to know, okay, so how are faculty in particular finding the implementation of this policy since it started? What is the result on their research, on their teaching, on their service? As far as research, how does it determine how they perform research, the funding for research? Do they continue to conduct research in groups or more individually? Administrators, how do the changes affect the financial circumstances of the schools, which then affects the outcomes for the faculty, for the students? So anyway, the point is it got very, very complicated. And I want to get a simple answer out of this, but to get there, there's a lot of questioning that goes into it. So if you want to write a good dissertation, you have to start off with the right questions. Because if the questions aren't any good, then your responses aren't going to be that great either. So that was one example. You might say, well, okay, where would you like to go for a vacation this summer? Let's go to San Diego. Why San Diego? How are you going to get there? How don't you want to get there? What are you going to do when you're there? What time of day do you want to do things? Do you do things with people or individually? Maybe with relatives? How much can you spend? Where do you want to stay? Anyway, the point is, the more questions you ask, the more rich your answer will become. So these are some examples of questioning in my own life, like a vacation or a dissertation research. But it seems to me education has it backwards, to be sure. We're taught, okay, what's the answer to this question? That's how testing is evaluated. We want to know what are the outcomes. But if you want to have a good educational experience, it's said you need the right answers. But if you want to have a good and rich and rewarding life, you need to ask the right questions. So it seems to me that even the questions to our lives are the most important. But are we asking them, is my question. My impression is we are not. But we need to. Why is that? Well, you get one life, you might as well do it right if you're going to do it. So I would suggest, if you have the time, and I think everyone can make the time, to work on the questions that are the most meaningful to you. Maybe it's about your career, maybe it's about your family, maybe it's about some hobby you want to pursue or a relationship. The more important it is to get to the right questions. Now, if I ask you what's 2 plus 2, that's not important, really. But if I ask you, what do you want to do with your life? That's the big question. Are we answering these questions? I come from a very liberal arts background, so we're encouraged, ask questions and so on. Anyway, to sum up, Einstein had one more quote that I'd like to close with. He said, curiosity has its own reason for existing. The important thing is to not stop questioning. And it is in this spirit that I invite you to examine the most important questions, whatever they are to you, preferably writing rather than just thinking about them, getting them out on paper. In my experience, I found that very helpful. Get to the questions first. Don't worry about the answers, because with the right questions, the answers will come quickly. As Einstein said, in only 5 minutes out of an hour. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, most welcome guests, and especially Peter. I'm evaluating Peter Weldon's number 3 speech from the Competent Communication Manual for those of you who are new to Toastmasters or for whom this is very fresh. And each project has its own objectives. The objective of number 3 speech, Get to the Point, is twofold. One is the speakers have a general purpose, which can be one of 4 things, either to inform, to inspire, to entertain, or to persuade, and have a specific purpose, which is more, well, specific. And Peter's speech was entitled The Art of the Question, and it is my job as evaluator to ascertain the extent to which Peter fulfilled the obligations of the project. And I have to say that you fulfilled them in quite an excellent manner. Your purpose was very clear. You was to persuade. And the specific purpose was to persuade us to focus on questions more than on answers. And all of your speech was in support of that persuasion. I liked how you began with a quote, and when it comes to quotes, Einstein is about as good as it gets when it comes to things. And that's especially appropriate for this topic, because one of the things that Einstein excelled in was really asking questions that the answer to which seemed obvious to everybody. So for example, if an object is moving and you send a beam of light, then the speed of that ought to be the speed at which you're moving and plus the speed of light. And Einstein said, is that really, really true? And it turned out that it wasn't, even though it was counterintuitive. So by focusing on those questions, Einstein was able to achieve great results and revolutionized physics over 100 years ago. So you began by giving us your purpose, which was I want to persuade you to ask these questions. And I liked how you said, stay with the question longer. The suggestion for the exercise of 55 minutes was an outstanding one, because that helps focus on that instead of just on the answers. As a teacher, of course, when I'm grading a test, I want to see the right answers. but I get to ask the questions. That's one of the good things. Now, a couple of suggestions. I liked how you talked about how questions can be either open-ended or closed-ended, but you didn't specifically mention that, so you might have pointed that out. A closed question just gives an answer and that's the end, like, where did you go? Santa Cruz. The example was, again, a good one. Why did you go to Santa Cruz? That's an open-ended question. It leaves things more open for the other person, so I think that would have helped us on that. I thought your personal story for going to Japan and doing the research and focusing on those questions was also excellent, because by giving a personal story, you make it personal. I think it might have been helpful to say what was the question to which going to Japan was the answer to. That might have helped us a lot. But overall, I liked how you ended with a quote from Einstein, which came back to the beginning, and then your final topic, any questions, was a great way to end it. And